Good evening. It is Thursday, October 2nd. Don't blink, man. October will be here and gone before we know it. Here in St. Louis, Missouri today it was 90 degrees, 90 plus degrees. I had to turn my air conditioning back on. The humidity was just god-awful, and I swear every bone in my body hurts tonight. That pivot on concrete and the heat really plays havoc with my body. I'm in a whole different kind of setup here in my living room. I'll kind of give you a little side tour. I don't have a lot to say, as usual. Like I said, there's not a whole lot going on in my life, but in order to kind of keep my followers, which I think is a funny term, to keep my viewers engaged, I want to bring you along in the absolute nothing that is happening in my world. I'm Kitryn Marie, reside in St. Louis, Missouri, a writer and artist, a speaker, life and business coach, teach a variety of art enrichment classes, teach personal development classes, published author. Not a lot is going on, and I'm bored out of my mind. I have been shopping just a little bit for something to do, and I am not a shopper. I got the dogs running around, so I'm kind of curious how this is going to work. Trying to leave them out of their crate a little bit more. Mostly they're pretty well trained. Shug, my Aussie hound, thinks everybody's out to get us all the time, so you probably will hear her bark. But anyway, back to what I was saying, not a whole lot is going on. Amazon was so kind to send me a notice about their October Prime days and to really try to push and promote my book, When He Had Her. It's a psych thriller, not a scary psych thriller, just one that you'll want to go from chapter to chapter to chapter to see how it ends, because it's gripping. I have been told that it could be made into a movie if it fell into the right person's hands. So, but anyway, When He Had Her on Amazon. Today in my restaurant gig, each day is different. Yesterday, and I've always been in food and beverage. I think everybody knows that. 32 years I've been in food and beverage. It's like being in the mafia. You never get out. I always say if you have a teen and they want to learn how to communicate with the public, and they always want to have $1 in their pocket, let them learn food service. If they become good at it, they can own their own restaurant, but a server, a bartender, a cook, a chef typically makes really good money. And in this trying economy right now, getting customers through the door and keeping them spending money with the money that they have, with what they can afford, and how they are tipping is so different. I started food and beverage in 1994. I'm drinking water. At that time, my older kids were young. I worked Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, was off Wednesdays, off the weekends, daytime only. My shift started at 11 and I was done by 6, give or take. I was making $900 a week back in 95. Progressively through the years and the times, money changed, liquor laws changed, and now I am lucky. I'm working still for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, daytime, and then I work Sunday night. I'm lucky if in tips I'm maybe making $400 a week. Sometimes it pushes the $500. The last gig that I was working, the other restaurant, I was making anywhere between $600 and $800 in tips on top of my, $6 and what is it now, 88 cents an hour. It affords this crazy life that I have, but because I'm not doing anything, my head is above water. It fluctuates. But today, people, that's all I can say. Half the time I think that's why I'm so tired, because of the people and the exchange of energy. And I try to be so entertaining, and I try very much to pay attention to my tables, because they come in for an experience. It's not so much they're looking, they want to eat and they want a good meal, but they're there for the experience. And you want to be able to give them not only good service, but you want to be able to give them something to talk about. And I am so good about chiming in on conversations. I will eavesdrop, and where I feel I can kind of segue in to say something, I will. Sometimes it's a hit, sometimes people are annoyed, but that's just me in general. Sometimes, people are like, yay, and sometimes people are like, get away from me. It's an all or nothing with me. There's no in between. So today my table of 5 that started out, and then it ended up being a table of 8, one of the gals, as I'm giving out my waters and so on and so forth, one of the gals says, I have a conspiracy theory I want to tell you all about, and I want to know what you all think. And it was a group of women and men, and they were probably, now I'm 64, they were probably every bit of in their mid-70s. And the one gentleman across from her, who I believe may have been her husband, he said, not here, not now. This isn't the place. And I finished giving out my waters, and I stopped, and I said, I'm all about a good conspiracy theory. Let me hear what you got. And she said, you want to hear it now? I said, yeah, I do. I said, let me hear what you got. So she proceeds to tell me, which I won't share with you, because it was a little bit on the controversial side. And I kind of listened to her, and a couple of the people at her table, they had heard that conspiracy. They weren't real sure what they believed. And then the first thing out of one of the other women's mouths were, we are anti-Trumpers. And I said, okay. And then somebody else had said, I think Trump's an idiot. Okay, you can feel that. That's just kind of how I'm like, you can feel that. And I said, well, here's the thing. I fall on the other side of that. Now you're going to hear my dog. Shug. I said, I fall on that other side. I said, I am a Republican, but, Shug, stop. I said, but I'm on the poor side of being the Republican. There's a dog walking. Hold on. It's never ending. Stop barking. So anyway, I say, I am always open for dialogue. I'm always interested in what anybody else has to say, because we learn from each other. Now, before anybody comes at me, or anybody decides to unfollow me or unsubscribe or whatever, I look at our president from a whole different type of view and perspective. And because my art classes are based in life coaching, I always think we need to have this open dialogue so we can really hear both sides of whatever the issue is, so it kind of fills in this gap that we are all seeing. And I left that table as it was. I did not chime in anymore, but I could already tell that I had ruffled feathers by just saying I fall on the other side. I'm paycheck to paycheck. I made the video about the whole health care. I don't have health care. I would be what would used to be called the middle class. You know, I don't make a lot of money, but I maintain. I don't get any type of assistance. I believe everybody who comes to our country, especially being Italian and having, you know, relatives of the past who came over from, you know, from Italy and came through Ellis Island, you know, come to our country. You know, bring us you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor, but by all means become an American citizen and do what is expected of you. Everybody is welcome. Being an Italian woman, everybody is welcome. You know, are you hungry? Let me feed you. And like with my job, you're coming to be fed, you're coming to be entertained, you're coming for that experience. But when you are having an open conversation where everybody around you is listening to what your conversation is, then you have to understand that there will be somebody typically to chime in. So anyway, as I'm leaving the table and I had gotten their orders and everything, and I know they were not going to say too much more to me in a political realm, and I don't like to talk politics at work, I just don't, but it was one of those moments where I just really wanted to, you know, put my 9 cents in. And anyway, and I said, continue your conversation, continue your dialogue, but please, no fighting. I will have to draw a line if you all get out of line like that, and they all started laughing. Well, they were all separate checks, and all but 2 tipped. And that's okay. That is their right, that is their preference, and honestly, I was a little not surprised by that. And, you know, that was my one table. What was my other tables? It was an unorganized chaos today. Today was my day behind the bar. My brewer guys, you know, morale has been down a little bit, and I always try to lift them up. They're young. They're in their 30s. They're married. Some have kids. Some have, you know, girlfriends. You know, they like the job in itself, but, you know, like all other jobs, it's up and down and up and down, and production might be low, or they may not have supplies. And I try to ask questions about the brewery and what they do and what their jobs are. And I can always tell their mood when they're coming to sit at the bar and eat. And honestly, they right now are providing about 20% of my income. And I greatly, greatly appreciate. So I always feel like, you know, because I am older, I'm old enough to be their mother or their grandmother, and I feel like I want to, you know, entertain them. So today's question to them was, tell me a fun fact about your wife, your girlfriend, about yourself. You know, what was something that stands out in your life, and how did you get here? Well, one guy was telling me his, you know, wife went into theater, and he had studied, you know, theater, and he's a musician. And somebody else had said after he graduated high school, they, you know, went into the food service industry. And somebody else had said that he really thought he was going to be a professional baseball player, that, you know, he excelled. And then somebody else had said, you know, their mother had typed 400 words a minute. And I laughed because back in high school, in my days, you had to take a typing class. And the typing teacher told my dad, because I was about to fail, he said, you know, head her in a whole other direction because she will never make it as a secretary. Well, I can type now. You know, we all have to have some kind of typing skills with having a laptop. But anyway, long story short here, it was like they get about a half hour for lunch, 40 minutes, and I try to get them to engage, not only with me, but amongst themselves, to keep them out of their phones. And I can always tell when they're having a bad day, you know, when they need a little bit of a pick-me-up and things like that. But, you know, there are certain perks within the restaurant industry when you are trying to entertain your people to make an income. And it is draining. It is very much draining. My counterpart, she had a party in our dining room area. My manager was running around trying to get schedules all done and catering. She was doing a catering job. So it's always something going on. Yesterday, though, I was cut by, 1 o'clock, 1:30, there was nothing. So yesterday, I think I made maybe $25 in tips. For today, it was like over 140, maybe. So it fluctuates, and you have to learn to balance and budget. So, when you're talking about your income and how you're living life, affording life, you have to almost be a magician when it comes to this economy and how you are making your money stretch, how you are being perceived, and I always talk about image, what your image is to the people that you surround yourself with to just help make the day go by better. What was your perk in today? What was the highlight? I used to ask my person that all the time. What was the highlight of the day? What was the good thing that happened? And I never wanted to dwell on the negative part of what his job was, because it was very much mind fucking more than anything else. It was very much a physical job. It very much took a physical toll on his body and his mind. So, when he would come home, I would always ask him, what was the highlight of the day? What was the good thing? It's important to have these glimmers in life. It's important to pick out the good things in life. It makes the days go by better. What was the other thing I wanted to talk about? Listening to, and I don't know what his title is, Pete Sexworth, the military guy who was meeting with all of the generals. I watch things and then I get clips of things, and I'm terrible with names. Terrible. I can see a face and remember a face, but I'm really bad about names. Hexworth, I think his name is. Hang on. He was talking about his military standard. There needed to be a certain conduct when it came to physical strength and the ability to do the job based on a standard and a conduct of which, if needed to go into battle, would the people who were in the military, were they fit to do it? Now, which brings me to, no, we're all not going into battle, although we all have our own battles. Do you not feel that there should be a standard and a conduct that allows you to do your job based on the agility that you have within yourself? I carry a tray. I do it really bad. I have a bad shoulder. And when I have big tables, everybody at the restaurant, they jump in to help me. One, I think they feel sorry for me. And two, they know that I struggle, and I do my very best to carry my own weight, no pun intended. But, with your own job, does your size, your weight, your height, does it hinder your job, or does it help your job? Are you physically able to do your job based on the shape that you're in, your health? I don't smoke. I haven't smoked in years. I do have asthma. It's mostly systematic asthma. When weather gets real funky, especially when it goes from hot to cold, I suffer immensely. Usually I get bronchitis about twice a year, so I have to pay attention, to my breathing. Because of my autoimmune issue, I pay attention to all the things in my physical part of my health, because I want to make sure that I'm able to do my job based on my ability, my agility, and not being out of shape or out of breath, or just maintaining the standard and conduct of which is required for the job that I do. You know, if you are up and down on ladders all day, are you huffing and puffing? Are you still smoking? Are you drinking in excess that you have, you know, swollen liver, swollen belly? Is it hindering your ability to bend over, to pick something up and move something? If there is a standard of a conduct of standard, a standard of conduct, however that gentleman was talking about for the military, do you not feel that it should be the same for your job? Which then leads me into, back in the day for our gym, we had to take the presidential exercise program, where you had to, physical fitness program, where you had to do certain amount of exercises, and then, you know, you were awarded a certificate, you know, climbing a rope, on the rings. I'm trying to think of all the things. The baton, running, handing off the baton, relay races, vaulting, jumping over, you know, the vault, being able to do a somersault and a flip, and all those physical things for kids who are in shape, because it's important to start those good health routines when children are young, so they don't grow into obese teens, which then leads into diabetes, which then leads into being an obese adult, which goes back to hindering of the way that you were living life. So those are things that have been on my mind. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree at all. You know, like I said, I am all about open dialogue. I want to hear. I want to hear what side of the fence you were on. I want to hear what your glimmer is in your daily life. I want to know, what is it that you look forward to, and what are the things that you are concerned about in the outside world once you leave your house. You know, and then when you were retreating at home, how are you retreating in order to unwind for the day? I never turn my TV on, never, unless I'm looking for something on YouTube. I will turn, though, dog TV or cat TV on, or I'll do the chimes or the ASMR, just, you know, to kind of tone down from the day, something very zen-like. I am in my wingback chair. Purchased this probably about a month ago. And then I have an ottoman, which my dog is laying on. Where's she at? So, you know, my comfort zone. When I come home, my chair, you know, the dogs all have a spot. Trying to decorate a little bit in the house. Decorated the outside. Like I said, I have an insert, fireplace insert in my Amazon cart. It's important when, at least I feel it is, when you come home, that you come home to comfort, that you come home where you can completely decompress from the day. You can kind of relax, you can kind of reflect, you can kind of recharge, and then looking forward to tomorrow, because you know you're going to have to do it all over again. But I am off tomorrow. I am off Saturday. I'll go back to the gig on Sunday night. I'm going to try to get my fishing license. I know it's so late in the season, but I'm going to try to go get my fishing license. If the weather cools down just a little bit, I think I'm going to find me a nice little park spot and go fishing just to relax. I have not fished at all this summer. It was just way too hot. I need to get up to the hill to get some good Italian cheese and some good Italian sausage. What else did I want to do? Oh, I'm going to pull out all my tomato plants tomorrow. I have still 30, 40 green tomatoes on my plants. I'm just going to pull them all off, put them in a paper bag. I've got 20, 25 tomatoes that this weekend I'll make some more sauce. I'll probably run over to my produce place and go to the grocery store. I want to grill tomorrow some sweet Italian sausage and make my good Mexican type corn on the cob. Grill it up. And what else? Some barbecue dry rub chicken legs. I think that's on the plan for tomorrow. But I'd love to hear from you. I would love to know your daily routine. I would love to know the things that you are concerned about. You know, in this nothing till something happens, you know, may that something that happens be really good for you, you know, whether it be for you personally or your family. We all need to be changing the way that we look at life and finding these little glimmers, you know, asking ourselves what really was the highlight of the day. If you'd like to learn more about any of my art classes, reach out kitrynmarie@gmail.com. You know, for today, for tomorrow, be happy, be blessed. Remember, fate turns on a dime, and it is up to you to decide what side of that coin you want to be on. You know, I'm an open book. Feel free, ask any questions at all. I'll look forward to hearing from you, and until next time, take care. Have a great night. Bye.